Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast. Today, I am so excited to have Chad Briscoe with me here. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks, Wesleyne.
Let me tell you guys a little bit about Chad. Dr. Briscoe. So I'm sorry, I should have introduced you as Dr. Chad Briscoe.
No worries.
He is an innovative, solutions focused bioanalytical thought leader with over 25 years of experience working with pharma partners every single day to bring new drugs to the market faster. At BioAgilytix, it is a bioanalytical contract research testing organization. I'm so excited to hear how you got from starting your career, deciding that you wanted to get a PhD, to moving into this world today. Give us the rundown.
You bet. I'm glad to do that, and it's been an interesting and crazy story, as is so many elements of my life. So I'm a career scientist, and I started in the industry, in the contract research industry, back in '97 after I finished my master's degree. I was at a contract research organization in Lincoln, Nebraska, and about 3 years into that experience, I was working at the bench, scientist, assaying samples, running instruments. Mass spectrometry is my area of expertise. And I was looking at how to develop in my career. I was in the pharmaceutical space, and so it was a career development conversation with my boss at the time to try and pursue my PhD. And the deal was they supported me, but monetarily, thank you very much to the company, but not as much in time, a bit of flexibility. So I pursued my PhD simultaneously while working in the laboratory. So the next 10 years of my life were quite interesting. I went from working at the bench in the lab to running the laboratory, being laboratory director. And at the same time, I went from one kid and 0 dogs to 4 kids and 4 dogs. So it was quite a busy time in my life. Thanks a million times over to my wife, who supported me through that and was organizing the chaos for us. So I had a fantastic career. That was a company called MDS. Loved it. The company is kind of broken up and sold off the pieces and doesn't exist anymore since about 2010. But when I left in 2010, I left for a challenge with a new company, a contract research organization, again in the bioanalytical space. And the challenge this time around was to build a new lab. So they wanted to greenfield a lab in the U.S. They had a laboratory in Europe, and they wanted to greenfield a lab in the U.S. And so took my skill set running an organization of about 140 people at the time, and started out back at one person, but in kind of a comfortable spot where I could be entrepreneurial, but have a little bit of the safety net of a big company behind me. Again, with a family of 4, you're kind of, it's a tough call to say I'm going to go out on my own and start up something, but gave me a really nice opportunity to be entrepreneurial. We built that laboratory quite nicely over the next 10 years. This was in Kansas City, and it grew well. And then, I kind of started looking at what do I want to do next. And partway through that experience, I had moved from an operational leadership role to a scientific leadership role, where I was leading our, you could call it a scientific affairs or a scientific office for the organization globally, where we would interface with customers to help bring the solutions to reality, right? So the solutions that our business development team would sell, it was our job to help make that interface between the customers and the challenging science, and make sure it was able to be operationalized back into the operations, make sure projects would happen smoothly within the operations when they kicked off, and that kind of just keep everything going that way. And so when I decided to make a change to the current organization I'm with BioAgilytix, I joined the company as chief scientific officer, and was in that role for a while. I was originally given a specific challenge to help support our Hamburg laboratory. I'd been working in Europe off and on over the years, and so I was in Hamburg for about 3-4 months, and back and forth. And then I don't know if you've heard of this thing. There's this COVID pandemic popped up, and I was sitting in Sweden, and all of a sudden we started hearing this panic and announcements from our president that they might be closing air travel. So I got on the next flight out of Copenhagen to come back to the U.S. and then started focusing, still looking at Hamburg. How can I help support them? But also more of taking more of a global view then. And so about 8 months went by, and I know our chief commercial officer at the time had been looking for ways to expand our leadership team in Europe for the business development role. He was really looking for a leader for the business development role in Europe. And I got a call one day in early January of 2020, and he said, "Hey, Chad, I know you've always been a scientist. You've always said you wouldn't join the sales and business development side of the organization, but what do you say you give it a shot? Take on Europe. We've had this need. I think it'd be a good challenge for you. It'd be a nice new direction for your career, and just something to see if you're interested in it." And I surprised myself. Sometimes we surprise ourselves when just yes comes out, right? And it's like, yes, but the only qualification is we got to figure out the details, right? It's like, I know we will, but let's do it. It just something caught me. I like to tell everybody too. I was literally sitting on a chairlift at Copper Mountain skiing, and I was like, I'll just take the call, see what he wants, and then so that's how I actually formally got into a business development sales role. So I know a lot of the people in at least in the CRO world don't like calling it sales, right? They like calling it business development. So. But yeah, that's how I got from master's degree at University of Michigan all the way, kind of the short version of all the way through to where I sit now as VP of Sales, VP of Business Development for our European division.
So, wow, this is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
You went from being a bench chemist to overseeing a lab,
Yeah.
working with a team in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
going to become a sales leader, and
Yeah.
managing a team in Europe. So first, I really want to dig into when you were asked to move from the technical side of the business to the commercial side of the business. What were some of the thoughts going through your head, and how did you make that decision?
Yeah. So I'll admit, I made that decision how I make a lot of my best decisions, and it's just my gut, and that's always how I've been. Is when I know something's right, I do it, right? So there's certainly some times where it makes sense to sit down and be analytical and look at the numbers and make a plan, but there's other times when you know what the right answer is, and somehow you don't even need to think about it very long. And that was one of those decisions. Like I say, I was sitting on a chairlift, right? So I had maybe maximum 3 minutes, to actually have this whole conversation about changing the whole direction of my career. And yeah, that's about what it took. And I said, yep. And then it was kind of like, but I got to go because, tips up, I got to get off this chairlift. So.
So it seems like it didn't take a lot for you to make that decision to say, hey, I've done this for many decades in my career, but now it's time for a change. Now I am ready to make a move. So tell us how the transition was for you, going from being very technical to stepping into that sales leadership role.
Yeah, so initially we had a lot of work to do, right? So as happens when you get a lot of new projects, you're able to bury yourself in it so much you're not even sure what the challenges are. You don't have time to sort of take in the emotions of what kind of a transition did I make? What's this mean for me longer term? You say there's a problem to solve here. There's some challenges the organization needs you to address, and so you dive into it. So I'd say initially it was much more about lining up the what's the strategy, right? So working with my boss, at that time it's still my boss, working with Nick Morosco to outline the strategy And then let's just build out the tactics, right? So you make this laundry list of things you need to do. The first thing we needed to do is build the team, right? So build a strong team, get stability within the team so that we're not having the turnover. We were having turnover every 3 to 6 months with business developers, and when you don't have any time to gain momentum, we know that that's really challenging in the business development world. It takes months and years, right? In my business to really start seeing the success. So stability within the team, and then what do we need for particular processes in Europe? How are we going to interact with the operations team? And so started getting all those pieces in place and just moving a million miles an hour. And then it's probably not until 6 months to a year later that I started sitting down and talking to Nick and thinking to myself about what does this really mean for me? How is it being in a business development role, right? I always was in a spot in operations where I could solve the problems hands-on. And as a business developer, you can solve your own problems. You can help improve sales. You can make new strategies and things like that. But you're not in operations fixing the challenges. You're able to influence things, but you can't hands-on fix those things. And that's been sort of the hallmark of my career outside of business development. Is I had a lot of customers come to me and say, Chad, we like working with your company because you always make it happen. You're not in every conversation, but when we really need it to happen, we give you a call. And so that's been a bit of a transition. How do you do that as a business development VP or anywhere from within the business development organization? It's a different challenge, and I've had to get comfortable with that and comfortable with this different role. And then you start looking at, geez, what's next? I'm not ready to jump out of this job, right? But you are kind of thinking down the road, like, man, when I've just turned 50, I'm just shy of 50, and what am I going to be doing when I'm 60? Am I going to be in this space? What do I think? Am I going to be I don't know, so there's all these thoughts and emotions that have been going through my head for the last 4 to 6 months now that I've settled into the role, and we're still very successful. We're still doing well. I love my team that I've built. So if they're listening, I don't want them to think I'm going anywhere, right? But you do. It's just a different position to be in. So it's but exciting still.
Ah, I can really understand and I can empathize with that high turnover in this technical sales field. One of the things that tends to happen is we hire either really smart people or we hire people who we think will fit the
Hmm.
role, but they're not quite equipped for a job in sales.
Right.
So, how were you able to really stabilize your team? How were you able to get that team? You said it was like every 3 months you guys were turning over
Oh
business
yeah.
developers, which is
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
stabilize it?
Yeah, and so yeah, I'll tell you. So some of the turnover was regrettable, and some of it was not as regrettable, right? As we also see, right? Somebody comes in, it's not a fit. I think you're doing a favor for yourself and the organization when you make changes that need to happen, so people can find the right fit for them. But yeah, it depends on the different individuals of what the approach is. So I'm very fortunate that I had one individual that was a very seasoned business developer, very committed to the organization. So partnering closely with him, and then as we look to build the other pieces of the team and fill the other roles, uh, we focused on having good, experienced, seasoned people who were more likely, I think, to join an organization that looked like it was moving in a direction of stability. I was the first business development leader in Europe for our organization. So part of this was our organization growing and saying, hey, we're going to have a dedicated European sales team. So people like when they're joining a team and being part of something. And I think especially in Europe, they were joining the European team, but still sort of part of the US team. And I think maybe that was a little bit challenging. It lost a little bit of focus. There's all sorts of elements. I hired a woman that had worked with me in the past. So I reached out to my network, right, of people that would connect with me and work well with me. And I think be loyal. I would say beyond just the company. I would hope be loyal to me. I mean, I think it goes both ways, right? You need people loyal to you and the company. And I try to talk to them all the time, right? Take care of the team, keep them motivated, buy in on what's going on. Last week, and we may want to unpack other aspects of this, but last week was our global sales meeting in San Diego, and only one of the team meetings got champagne when we had our breakout sessions. So little things like that, like, hey, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're gonna have champagne in our meeting and celebrate successes, right? Do some of these little things, so that's, hope if my team would hear this, they'd agree with everything I'm saying. But it'd be interesting in this situation to get their feedback as well.
What were some of the challenges that you had in rebuilding your team?
Yeah, so I'd say the first challenge is anytime you bring in new business developers, they have to build the relationships. They have to build the territory. The way we're broken down in Europe is pretty straightforward. We have a guy in the UK. We have a guy in Southern Europe. One in sort of Northern Europe, Germany, Netherlands, and the woman I mentioned before is in Scandinavia. So it's broken down pretty cleanly in Europe, but in most of those regions, we were really trying to build out the region. So you're hiring someone, you're saying, hey, you need to take on this region. It's a great opportunity, right? Because you can build it up, but at the same time, you're not walking into $10 million in sales off the bat. So that's probably the first challenge, is getting everyone to have patience, and then also getting the organization to have patience with the delivery of the business developers. And we ran a lot of statistics looking at the different individuals who had been with the organization for different amounts of time, and there was a clear correlation in the data. Before I said I'm gut feel, I love data also. It's a matter of when you use data versus when you make that quick split-second decision. But we looked at a lot of data, and it was clear that you got to give people time, right? And we're seeing that now. If I look at the order in which I've brought on these 4 business developers, the performance is directly proportional to how long they've been there. So the guy who's been there the longest has the best sales this year. Number 2 is the guy who's the second longest, and then 3 and 4 follow right behind. So there's no mystery in the challenge there. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times within organizations, what people tend to do is they expect to hire someone and they expect them to just ramp up by themselves. Like, it's almost like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're a great person. You're just gonna get out there and sell our products. You maybe
Mm-hmm.
have been selling the competitors' products, or maybe you just understand the science, but
Mm-hmm.
really allowing people to come into their own and give them the time to get up to speed and develop. And then as a leader, having those expectations that are set right. So really listening to
Mm-hmm.
you, it's like, okay, the person who's been here the longest, I expect them to have the most growth. I expect them to be the one who's at the top of the leaderboard. And based on the metrics that I've seen this person give me, or the thing that this person has done, I expect other people to kind of come along.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said it better than I did, without a doubt. But one of the things that I've also done is connecting my people. Right, I think that's a common. Certainly, it's common. The BD like to reach out to their teammates, and I've really encouraged them to do that, to make those connections, so that they feel that true team camaraderie. Have one-on-ones with each other. Just don't just have the one-on-ones with me. Or if you've got a challenge, maybe this guy is better to solve that challenge than I am, because hey, this team's all been in sales for 10 to 25 years. I'm only a year and a half in. I don't have all the sales numbers. I don't. You can tell I don't speak all the jargon. I'm learning it. I haven't read all the books. I'm starting to listen to your podcast. I'm learning a lot there. But as far as really sales go, man, I'm new to this gig. I mean, I've been selling through influence and just selling because as a nice guy, as a scientist for years. But yeah, I'm not the guy that knows how. I'm not the expert in the Miller Hyman techniques and all these different all these different things. I'm learning, right? I'm excited to learn, but I need to rely on other folks. Again, my current boss has been extremely supportive. He's a he's a exemplary career sales professional. My counterpart in the U.S. has been tremendously helpful, just to give make a call and say, hey, what would you do in this situation? How have you led in this way? And when you had these kind of challenges, so yeah, I'm a big promoter in relying on your colleagues, talking to your colleagues, going to your external network. I've called folks outside of my company to ask for advice multiple times because I'm learning, which is it's probably the part I didn't really think I'd embrace as much, right? It's like, hey, I'm really trying to learn the craft. I'm a pretty good scientist, and I'm really trying to learn the craft of sales. The good news is I've been really successful in the last year and a half, so I'm looking forward to seeing, how well can I do when I actually feel like I know what I'm doing, if I ever get there.
So, really, what I love that you said is, hey, I have people who understand sales better than I do, and I am not threatened by them,
Mm-hmm.
which so many leaders tend to be threatened by, salespeople that may want to climb up above them, or,
Mm-hmm.
say, well, I want your job one day, or I may want to be your boss one day. And I think a sign of true leadership is really having that confidence in yourself that, hey, my people should be better than I am.
Yeah.
And that is actually a check mark that you are a good leader when you can develop people that exceed you, that do more than you ever have come to do. And so you saying, well, I'm not the greatest in sales, but I'm a good leader and I know this and I know that. And they help me with the sales and I help lead them.
Yeah, I know what customers want, right? I think I know what customers want. I understand people pretty well. I love working with people. I love to facilitate solutions. I've been accused in I don't want to say negative way, but maybe in a coaching way of being too much of a pleaser sometimes. But I think we got to take some of these things and make them strengths, right? So if I'm too much of a pleaser, then let's figure out how we can turn that into a strength, right? Let's use it to focus on customer satisfaction. Let's use it to focus on employee satisfaction, bringing the team together, motivating people, but don't let it get in the way of making hard decisions that need to be made occasionally. That's when some of those challenges become negatives, or I should say those challenges become negatives. Yeah.
So you are going to be the first person on the podcast that is gonna debunk Wesleyan's what I call
Ooh.
Wesleyanisms or Wesleyan's wisdom, in
Oh
that
boy.
in order to be a good sales leader, you must be
Mhm.
good in sales. Tell me, what do you think about that statement?
I would say that I don't have a clue if I'm any good at sales. So, because I've never really sold, which I think I would guess a lot of the business developers that I've worked with over the years would say, Chad, you're fantastic in sales, right? I think they would say, this position's been waiting for you. It's just been a matter of when you would actually move into it. You've always been selling. You're really good at sales. But the reality is, until a year and a half ago, I never worked against an individual sales target or had a territory or any of that. So, am I good at sales? I don't really know. I think I'm a pretty good sales leader. The numbers say I'm a pretty good sales leader, so sometimes nothing else matters, right? So, yeah. So, did I debunk it or did I agree with you? I'm not sure.
You're kind of telling the fence. I thought you were going to say, yes, Wesley, I am a good sales leader, and I've never sold
Yeah.
anything ever. And
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
beg to
Yeah.
say that, really, in listening to your story and the way that you've gone through your career and your path, you never were, as you said, I've never been classically sales trained,
Hmm.
which most
Right.
people haven't. They're just
Right.
doing whatever they want to, but not having sold, but you're still able to lead a sales team. And I think what you've taught me, and I am humble enough to say when I'm learning something new, is that it is more important to be a good leader, and the sales part of that is coming along the way, right? Like when
Yeah.
you came into the position, you said, okay, turnover is high. You don't need to have known anything about sales to understand how to fix turnover, how to fix company culture, how to stabilize, how to rearrange territories, how to onboard. And so, really, I think that one of the things that I am actually leaning into these days when I'm talking to people is they tend to promote the top salesperson, and that
Hmm.
top salesperson is for sure not always a good leader. And so, really switching the paradigm and thinking about, okay, let's get a strong leader from outside of our industry, or a strong
Hmm.
leader who it may not necessarily have done classic sales, but is sales minded. Like you said, I was always customer facing, I was always having to focus on the customer, right?
Hmm.
So, I think that, yes, you did debunk the myth.
All right. I love fighting the battles, right? When as you were talking, I'm thinking, if it's fighting the battles for my team, or if it's fighting battles for the customers, or sometimes you're fighting the battles for the operations team that needs to deliver, right? I mean, we don't want to leave them, we don't want to hang them out to dry. Not, when things don't go perfectly with the customer, it's not always on them, right? And so they need us to fight the battles along with them for the customer. So I like getting in there and making things happen. Again, whether it's sales or leading operations or in the scientific leadership roles. And I do think that piece resonates with my team is they know I'm always going to fight the battles for them. I hope they feel that way anyways.
Yes, yes. I would definitely say that if you, during this difficult 2-year period where
Hmm.
we've been in this pandemic, you've been able to retain your people who
Yeah.
joined you during this time, I would say that that is definitely, definitely the sign of a strong leader.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you've had a
Hmm.
very diverse career. You've done a lot of amazing things. What is one thing that you would say you are most excited about having accomplished?
Yeah, I think the most exciting career opportunity, or not career opportunity, probably the most exciting thing that I accomplished was the first drug, because I'm in the pharmaceutical space, the first drug that I saw from pretty early in the process all the way through to approval. And I've seen others since then, but the very first one, it was I can't disclose the name of the company, but I was in this case I was literally working on the bench and developing the assays and doing all the science for it, and then I progressed through a project management role, and then ultimately when this drug was approved, because it takes years, and it takes years for the career to develop and takes years for the drug to get approved, but I watched this drug go all the way through my lab and through my organization to be on the market. And in if you work in the pharmaceutical development space, that is what it's all about, right? It's about seeing drugs go to market. And since then, every time I see a drug that I touch that's on the market, or in one case just recently, there was a drug that I knew that I had worked on, it was a fairly unusual drug that my wife was prescribed, and she's like, what, it's for, and it's not something you see all the time. She's like, what is this? What is this drug? And I looked at the label and went, hey, I worked on that back in 2006 when it was like, really early in development. And then, and so you see that direct impact on people that are close to you. So that is by far and away the biggest hit in my career, right? It's not as much. I love what I've done. I love all the different things I've done, but when you can actually have an impact on so many other people, that's by far and away at the top of the list.
I love that. And that, Chad, is why you are a good leader. It's not about, well, I made all this money, or I did this, or I did that. It's, I made this drug, and knowing how this drug is impacting not just one
Hmm.
person or 10 people,
Yeah.
but thousands and maybe even millions of people, right? And saying, like, that is what I hang my hat on, that very first drug. And
Yeah.
even to see today, something that you worked on a whole decade ago,
Hmm.
almost 2 decades ago,
Yeah.
is impacting lives today.
Yeah, because I think that program started in maybe '99, and then it was probably approved in 2006, 2007, something like that. So yeah, so I really that first company I was with, I really saw the progression through my career, and yeah, and drugs still on the market today. I mean, it's still helping people, so very exciting. Yeah,
That is awesome.
yeah,
Well, Dr.
yeah.
Chad Briscoe, you have given us a lot of amazing gems. And really, as I said, and it's very hard to change my very strong opinions, but you're tilting me on that side. You are tilting me on that side. If people are interested in getting in contact with you, what is the one best way?
Yeah, probably the best way is to look me up on LinkedIn and send me a LinkedIn message. I can put my email out there, which would be fine or whatever, but you can find me on LinkedIn really easily. I'm always chatting with people on LinkedIn Messenger, and so look me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk about anything, right? I mean, yeah, anywhere from sales strategy, how I did it, to if you want to be a customer, we'd love to talk to you about that as well, of course. So and anywhere in between, connecting with old friends, right? I mean, I all sorts of things we do through LinkedIn nowadays. So
It is an
yeah,
amazing platform.
it is.
Be sure to connect with Chad on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for sharing your time, your talent, and your expertise with us today.
And thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. Great conversation, and I'm enjoying your podcast. So hope to hear many more from you. It's on my list, probably top five rotation right now. So
Yay! So
yeah,
happy to hear that
yeah,
because, everyone knows that is a podcast host that it is a
yeah,
labor of love. And
yeah.
so the more lives that I can impact, the better that makes me feel.
You
Thank you.
bet. Thanks so much.
And that was another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast. Remember, in everything that you do and all that you are each and every day, transform your sales. Until next time.